Okay, we're going to continue where we left off with our last video here. We're going to darken some of these areas, add a bit of fadedness and texture into this image to sort of distress it and age it just a little bit more. So the first thing we're going to ask you to do is grab another curves layer. So you have curves number 2, and click this little button here with the little finger with the up and down arrows. It's kind of a cool feature where you can go onto your image and you see this eyedropper tool show up. If you click and hold and then drag downwards, it takes that area, that lightness value, in the specific area that you're pointing and dragging down. And you can notice that the curves adjustment layer is actually auto-adjusting to accommodate that, which is a kind of a cool feature. Now it darkened the whole image right now, so I'm going to, what I'd like to do is just have it in the background. So I'm going to click and Control I to invert the layer once again, and then use white and a paintbrush. I'm going to bring the size of the paintbrush up quite a bit, and then paint that darkness in. You'll notice that I've got an opacity on my brush of only about 50%, so it's sort of a soft touch. Nothing really precise. You can see I'm being fairly quick about where exactly this goes, and paint this in. And you notice over here in the curves layer that I'm starting to darken that area and darken the areas towards the outside. Alright, so here's my before and there's my after. So you can see kind of that adjustment and how that benefited the image. At this point I've got a bunch of adjustment layers all kind of enhancing color and tone. So one thing you can do to sort of simplify your life in your layers palette is you can click on that first one and then hold down Shift and click down on the other one at the bottom, so all of them are highlighted. And then if you use the keyboard shortcut Control, Shift and click one more time, Control G, it groups them together. And so you can rename this. I'll rename it Color and Tone. And there you can see all the adjustments that you've made in one fell swoop just by hiding. There was our original image, and this is the one after all of our adjustments. Now what I'd like to do next is add sort of a darkened border or edge to this image. So the way I'm going to go about this is not obvious at first, so you follow these steps. So I'm going to make a new layer by pressing that new layer icon right there, and I'm going to fill that layer with black. And there's a couple ways you can go about that. You can use the paint bucket tool and click it in, and then you fill it with black. I'm just going to edit and undo and show you another way. You can also go Shift F5 and you get a fill function, and you can either fill it with different things, and if you've got black it also fills it with black. Two ways of getting to that same area. So right now I've got this black layer that's covering our image. Next I'm going to add a mask to this. So I click on the mask and give myself a mask right there. And I'm going to grab the marquee tool. Alright, the rectangular marquee tool. I've already clocked in a bit of a feather here. You can click and hold and you can kind of slide and adjust the feather, or you can type in the feather amount. And then I'm going to give myself a rectangle sort of in from the edge, just like that. Alright, and so what I've got that feathered marquee tool, and I'm working on my mask right now, and what I want to do is I want to fill that center part of the mask with black. So again, you hit Shift and F5, and I'm going to fill the center part with black. Alright, so it was a little confusing to see how I went about that, but you can start to see the results there. So essentially, if I deselect, you can see that I've got this sort of faded black area around the outside border of the image, and the reason that I've done that, the reason I've done that is to get that darkened edge, and how I've done it is to get that layer mask and block out, so I've only got the black around the outside edge. So now you can see with a normal blending you've got this sort of black border. We're going to change it again to our new favorite blending mode of soft light, and you can see that sort of aged look around the outside, which is also already pretty neat. What I want to do is, I think, make that a little less obvious in terms of a rectangle by going into my properties of the mask, which are already popping up here. You can either refine it here or on the properties, and feather my mask somewhat. I'm going to feather it about 8 pixels or so. All right. Feather it even more. And you can see what's happening is that that obvious rectangle is blending out to being something a lot more subtle. Just like that. Alright, so there now we've started to have that aged effect. It's starting to dark around and sort of fade like an old photograph might. I've got this texture that's been sitting in the file that you'll see in the file when you're working on there too. If you click on it to see that, this is sort of, it's called a scratched film texture. You can find lots of these textures on Google with Creative Commons licenses and things like that too. This is kind of a nice sort of textured effect, and we're going to add that in and blend it again into soft light, so you can see that much more subtle, sort of embedded in there. You can Control I to invert so that those scratches turn into light scratches, or you can hit Control I again so they're dark scratches. I kind of like the look of the light scratches, so I'm going to keep it like that. Alright, and then I'm going to add a mask over top, because I don't want the scratches to be absolutely everywhere all over the image. So I'm going to grab my paintbrush with black, keep the opacity fairly low. I'm going to try to find a sort of interesting brush here, something with a bit of texture to it, just like one of these. And I'm going to go into and paint out some of the scratches. This is a pretty subtle effect to begin with, but just so there aren't scratches everywhere all across the image evenly. So just kind of taking some of the scratches out, just like that. You can see that effect happening on the mask right there. I'm going to refine the mask and feather the edges of those new lines just to make them even more subtle. Alright, I think I'm nearly done. The last thing I think I might show you to do is maybe bring a little bit more brightness to the face. So I'm going to add one last curves layer, and I'm going to bring the brightness up like that. Alright, and then Control I to invert, and I'm going to grab my paintbrush with a white paintbrush to paint into my mask. I'm going to grab just a more regular soft edged brush here and just start to paint in to bring attention to his face, maybe around the edges of the paddle, just to bring a bit of lightness and glow to the paddle itself. A few details around his collar, just like that. Alright, you can see the adjustments made on the curves adjustment layer here as I'm painting into the mask. So that just brings a bit of brightness into the face there. Alright, so there you go. So now you have an aged, textured photo with scratches into it that really brought it to a whole different level compared to this original photo right there. So give that one a shot.